Hello and welcome to Spare Room Studio. If you're new to the channel, my name is Jackie and today I'm going to colour in Kerby Rosanes' Dark Fairytales. This video is not a full colour along. It is a compilation of clips that I have taken over several days while working on this double page spread. I began colouring the background there with some acrylic paint markers a few days ago. But recently I've been working with the Languo Gel Pens and wanted to try them out in this book to see how they react on the paper. Previously I have uploaded a video where I coloured with the Languo Gel Pens directly onto the paper and then diluted them with the water brush. I enjoyed the result of that and the process of doing it very much, so I wanted to have another go with it in different books to see how different paper reacts to the gel pens working that way. You may notice that I have something on the end of my pen here, and that is a piece of blue tack. We call it blue tack even though it's white. And any sort of malleable, kneadable eraser or Sculpey clay or something like that will do the same job. And the reason that I've done it is that there is a small hole in the end cap, and once you plug that hole up, it really does force the ink to flow out much quicker and much heavier. So given that this is a large area, I thought that having extra ink on the paper would be easier to dilute and spread. But you can see that it doesn't really have that effect. It only comes out so far, and then I notice once the paper has had a chance to dry that it leaves quite obvious pen strokes behind. So I am still experimenting to find the best way to get the results that I'm looking for, and having a lot of fun playing with these pens. The Languo gel pen does have a very good flow. The ink does come out quite thickly and is really nice to use, but sometimes it can slow down a little bit, and if you would like to give this technique a go of plugging up the end cap, please be aware that sometimes the ink will flood out quite quickly and heavily, and you do need to be prepared for that in case it makes a mess on your picture. I have sped this piece of footage up. It's quite repetitive, and I'm just using techniques that you have seen me do or will see me continue to use as the page progresses. But when there's anything that I feel that needs explanation, I will speak to you in a voiceover, or there are some clips that are in real time and I'm speaking to you in real time. What you might notice is that I am only laying down colour in small areas and then proceeding to blend the colour out. I have found that with the lighter colours that has been the best way to work, but here with this darker pen it doesn't seem to be working as effectively as I had hoped. I don't know whether that is the fact that it's a darker colour and it's much more obvious, or whether maybe it's partly me, the way that I'm applying it. But my recommendation with such a dark colour is to possibly not do individual pen strokes like you might be able to see here at the edge of the clouds. It's better if you work in small circular motions and heavily saturate the area, and at least then when it blends out you've got more of an even edge rather than this rough edge that's very obvious that there are pen strokes. For some things that won't matter at all, but for a sky you really do like to have a smooth blend for a sky, I think, unless you're trying to portray rain or some sort of stormy weather, but I really did want this section of sky to be smoothly blended and dark with a bit of a glow around the moon. But you will see how I end up getting around this as the video goes on. You may also notice that at times I work back over damp paper with the pen directly onto the damp paper, and I advise that you take a very, very light touch if you have a go at this yourself. This pen has a 0.6mm nib. It is very, very small, almost needle-like. And I find that sometimes the ink does have a very nice effect when you work over the damp paper. However, you need to take the light touch because damp paper can tear very easily. And also I'm just showing you there that I'm checking for bleed through. When the paper is damp and you're forcing ink onto the damp paper, you can push that pigment through the paper much quicker and it'll bleed a lot more. So a very light touch going in layers is probably the best thing to do, and because I could see a little bit of shadowing, I decided to leave that section alone and let it dry before I decide how to proceed further, and just give it a chance to dry thoroughly before I try and put any more pigment onto the paper. This area is a good example of how I feel like the lighter colour blends out that little bit easier than the darker colour, and also the pen strokes aren't quite so obvious. Although I think the pen strokes aren't so obvious because there are some lines in the drawing. Kerby has described the direction of the roof with lots of line work, and I applied the pen in the same direction so that any streaking or pen strokes that remain after I've diluted the ink will help support describing what that roof is doing. So it is sometimes useful to have those pen strokes or streaks or any sorts of marks. If you apply it in a way that helps to describe what the item is, you can actually make that work in your favour and it doesn't detract from the picture. So now I turn my attention to the background and some of the areas that already have acrylic paint marker on, and I want to see whether the pen works over the top of the acrylic paint marker, and it does. And also I want to start toning down some of those yellowish cream colours that I have on some of the tombstones and the statues there. It is a night scene, and I think that when I first put those acrylic paint markers on, my thought was that I wanted to try and portray different types of stonework and so on. And I never really intended it to be quite that bright, so I'm just toning down the colour so that it suits the night scene and isn't quite so eye-catching. The focus of this double page spread is the girl in the red shoes, and so I will work towards making her and the skeleton and the shoes obviously the focal point of the image, and the background is just supporting the story. So I will work on darkening that background and making the foreground really stand out, but at this stage I'm just getting the basic colours down and working through the image so I get a sense of what all the details are. Kerby does draw some very, very detailed images at the best of times, but this particular book is in overdrive. He's got so much line work, he's drawn so many elements and different things on the page, and it can be a little bit overwhelming to start with. And so I tend to usually pick one aspect of the page and work on it to help me resolve in my mind what's going on the page. So I'm using a light cream colour here. It's a much cooler cream than the colour that I put on the statues and tombstones in the background. So this has got a much more grey, cool undertone than what they are, and it's much more in keeping with what I really wanted those statues to look like. So I will work on changing the colour and cooling off that warm yellowy colour in the background. So I work through the skeleton onto the figure, and at this point in time I choose to work directly onto the paper with the pen and not dilute it at all. And that's for two reasons. One is this is much too fine detail to be using the water brush and trying to blend. And I like the effect of the gel pen when it dries and it's only been used as the gel pen. It dries to a nice finish that reminds me very much of acrylic paint, and it can have a slightly shiny or plasticky look to the pen when it's dried, the ink. And I feel like making her and the skeleton very solid and opaque will help bring them into focus, and having some washy diluted colours in the background helps to push the background further into the background. You will see though as I go on that my thoughts about this page change quite a bit, and I don't tend to plan pages out. I start colouring and let the page unfold, and I go with whatever happens. So in the end, you will see that a lot of this work that I've done with the pens, diluting them with water, will end up having some coloured pencil put over the top of them. So some time has passed and I've decided I'd like to use these gel highlighters on this page. I bought them fairly recently from Temu, and they were marketed as Bible highlighters. The colours are quite transparent. I guess if you want to highlight pages or passages in your Bible, you would want it to be quite lightweight and fairly transparent, and these gel highlighters certainly do work that way. The texture is very nice and light. It skims across the page very easily, and the colours that I've chosen here are quite vintage and muted. So I also bought some of these little brushes to have a go at blending them, and that works reasonably well. On another page I did try blending with my finger, and I found that that was quite effective as well. And so I've been experimenting with them because they are new to me. I don't own anything else like this product at all. The Faber-Castell gelatos and the King Art gel sticks and so on can be quite expensive to get in Australia, and I didn't know whether I was going to like this product at all. So I actually saw these on Temu and they were very, very cheap. So I thought that I would buy them and give them a go. If I'm not sure whether I'm going to like a product, I will often try and buy open stock, so just a couple of colours that I know that I enjoy using, and I'll try a product out before I invest the money into them. If they're cheaper, I tend to be a bit more blasé about it, but if it's very expensive and I don't know whether I actually even need that type of product, then open stock is usually a good way to go to get a feeling for it. Now I have worked on one other page and I used the brush and I used my finger, and I didn't have the greatest results in some areas. What I have found in my experiments so far is that you need a light touch, so blending the colour up slowly and with a light touch means that you can blend it together much easier and you don't get obvious streaky smudges or anything like that. Because I have this enjoyment of working with water-based products, when something doesn't blend very well for me, I will inevitably try using water and see whether that works. And I didn't know if these gel highlighters were going to be water soluble. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody use water to blend them out. I don't really have much experience of them at all because I didn't have them, and because they were so expensive. I didn't tend to watch videos that people were using gel highlighters or gel crayons, pardon me, or gel crayons at all. So I just didn't bother clicking on those videos. So this was a little bit of a experiment again, because I just didn't know what was going to happen really. And I was pleasantly surprised at how they do blend out. And once it's dry, it's quite a nice effect. I'm really happy with it. So again, do you need them? Well, that's up to you to decide, but they are enjoyable to work with. And what I'm finding these days is that the process of colouring is much more important to me than the end result. And when I find an art supply that I enjoy using and helps with that process, I like to focus on the colours. I like to pay attention to how the product feels when I'm using it. How easy it is to use has a big impact on me. And those are the prerequisites I have for when I'm buying products. So have a think about it. Don't rush out and buy anything that you see me using unless you really are in the market to try it. You want to have a go with it. None of these things are entirely necessary. You can create a beautiful image just with one product. So one set of pencils, one set of markers, one set of gel pens even now that I've had a go with these gel pens. You don't need to be layering up colours. You don't need to have all of these things. This is actually a test page for me. It becomes an experiment as I go on, because each time I do something, I think, oh, I wonder how this will work, or what will happen here, or I want to know how a product overlays with another one. So what I'm trying to say is that you don't need all of these things. They are very nice, and I won't lie, they are nice to have. And if you're a process colorist like I am, and it's all about the actual doing, the making, the creating, then you will thoroughly enjoy having lots of things to play with. If you're only in it for results and you don't like having lots of things, you don't need them. You can create beautiful images with very little supplies. So that becomes all about technique, knowing some different techniques, and you will be able to create all sorts of looks. So back to the gel pens. Here I wanted to tone down some of this very yellow based cream that I've got in the background here. It's much too vibrant and I want it to recede. I want the girl to come forward and the background to go backwards. So I'm having a go with diluting the gel pen over the top of the acrylic paint marker, and that acrylic paint marker is providing a little bit of a barrier so that the water will not bleed through the paper quite so quickly, or indeed not at all if I use it lightly. Also, because these pens are very new to me, I'm still not familiar with a lot of the colours. I don't know what they're going to look like when they're on the paper. I don't know what they're going to look like when they're overlaid other colours. So it's really very much a process of playing, experimenting, and as I've mentioned, I'm finding at this point in time The experiments and the playing are very enjoyable to me, and if the page doesn't quite end up how I had envisaged, I'm not too upset by that. I'm actually enjoying having the time to sit and just lose myself in using the mediums that I've got and playing around with different techniques. So here I'm checking whether that area is dry. I had a look at the back to see if there's any bleed through, and I'm going to proceed a little bit further with the sky. At this point, it occurs to me to try the method of scribbling onto a non-porous surface and diluting the ink on that surface and applying it like a watercolour. And very much to my surprise, it actually works. So it can be difficult to put the ink onto the plate because it's very shiny, and you've got a tiny little nib here that is metal. So it does skate across the surface of the plate a little bit. But what I found is if you try to use a slower application of the ink to the plate, and I do show you in another clip later much more closely how I do it, you can get a bit of ink on there, and you can see just how easily that ink is diluting when it's on the plate. So another thing that was pleasantly surprising about this is just how far that diluted ink is moving. So you can see that was a tiny bit of ink that I put onto the plate, and I've diluted it with a small amount of water, and I'm only using a little bit each time, and look how far it is blending on the paper. That was a huge surprise to me. I didn't think it was going to work like that at all. So what is the purpose of doing this? I think the purpose of doing it is that the pen as a pen directly onto the paper and not diluting it is perfect for those little small areas, really tight spaces that you want to get into, and also perfect for colouring things that you want to be very much the focus. You want deep, saturated, opaque colour. And then the ability to be able to dilute the same ink, the same pen in this way, means that you can apply it to a much bigger area very easily. You can blend it, you can make it recede into the background, and so on. So for me, I get excited by products that have multiple purposes, and especially if they are cheap. And I'm just showing you there that it hasn't really bled through. It's a bit of ghosting, but it hasn't really bled through. I will be able to colour on that other page. But if I can find a product that's cheap and pleasant to use, and I can use it for multiple purposes, I'm really happy. So I was pleased with how that worked, but just for good measure, I'm having another go with colouring directly onto the paper with the darker colour. Pardon me again. But this time I'm using it in a much more controlled, smaller area to see whether I get a better result out of it, working in that small area. Because what I've noticed is if you work in very small areas very heavily and then blend it out, I seem to get a better result than when I scribble with the pen in an erratic manner and then try to blend it out. All I see is the pen strokes. So I'm just playing around with the different ways of applying the pen, applying the ink, and just exploring what is possible with these pens. And it is now Tuesday. I started to colour this page on Monday, and I watched Dede Willingham's live stream, which is Monday night my time here in Australia, so it would be Monday morning in the US and the UK. Anyway, Dede shared these pens on her live, and we had great fun, a lot of laughs at Dede struggling with the packaging, so laughing with you, Dede, not at you. The packaging isn't great, I have to agree with her, and I do put my pens away at the end of each page, but I do have them out while I'm working on them. They're all here, they're all mixed up. So what I will share with you, because there were a few questions that were raised during the live that I'll try to remember and go through here in case anyone is watching this video. So the name here, Maillard or Maillard, that name there is the name of the set. So the set of 9 colours that they come in, that is the name of the set. Do I have that packet handy? Yes, I do. Hang on. Okay, so here's the empty packet. So that is the name of the pen. And it's very hard to read because it's in metallic silver or gold writing, which, you know, my eyesight isn't the greatest. I wear glasses for reading, and I have a lot of trouble reading these shiny prints. So I wish companies wouldn't do it, but hey ho. Dede did have a magnifying glass, which is a great idea. So that's the name of the set, and there is a number here on the pen, and that number is on every pen from that set. So let's see if I can get it to focus in. This one is 0, so I can even hardly read that, 0564. So both of these pens say Maillard 0564. Each colour does not have its individual number, but the set does. Now the name Maillard is on the packaging, but the number can be difficult to find, and I think it's because there is different types of packaging depending where you buy them from. Probably different times they've been packaged. But if you can get that glare out of the way, LGD0564, that number there, that is what is on the pen, 0564. So yeah, they're made in China. The packaging, as I say, is not necessarily the same for all the sets, even though the pens are the same, I believe. This is all just speculation because I do only own this particular type of set, and I think there were a couple that came to me. So you can see again, this one says 0563 on the back of the pack. But all of this on the front is Chinese. We've just got sweet pink. So that's how you can work out, you know, what set the pen comes from, what packet it belongs in, if you want to keep them in the packets. But as I say, this is just, I can only comment on what I've got here in front of me, and this is what I've got in front of me. So all of these ones here are all the same. I did have one set that came and it had a sticky, here you go, a sticky label over the back of it, which makes it even harder because that's covering up all that information. This does have a batch serial number, but nothing about that number on the pen is on that label. So this one is a Mirandi set, and it is 0552, I think. I'm having real trouble reading that. So, you know, with this label stuck over the back of it, that makes it even more difficult to work out what's going on. Yeah, so another question was about, you know, why is there several sets that are called Mirandi and yet they are different. So we've got, this one is Mirandi, this one is Mirandi. Mirandi was a painter. I don't have all the information up on my iPad close to hand at the moment, but Mirandi was a painter. If you Google his name, you'll get his biography and a little bit of information about his art. But he used to work with a muted palette of colours and quite often used colours that were very greyed. So he painted a lot of still lifes using very, very muted greyed colours. Like, you know, the colours have grey added to them so that it changes the tone of it. So, you know, colour theory can be a bit tricky to explain when you don't know it fully, and I don't pretend to know it, but you have colours, you have hue, you have shade, you have tone, and it's all about whether, you know, maybe white's been added, there's a grey base, or black's been added, whether the pigment's pure. You know, you can Google it all and go into it in great depth, but for most of us who are just doing colouring books, you don't want to go into it that heavily. You don't need to, really, but as an artist, artists study this stuff. But there is information on YouTube, on the internet. Just Google it if you want to learn more, or perhaps visit your library and borrow an art book and get interested in art techniques, and there will be some colour theory. But that is what Morandi, you know, that's what Morandi refers to. He's an artist, and they've chosen the colours because they're influenced, you know, by his particular colour palettes that he worked with. So as I say, this one I can tell apart because the number on the pen will match that number on the back of the packet there. This particular set's going to be harder. Unless I peel this label off, I can't see the number on the back of the packet. You know, so that could be a little bit harder to tell it apart. This number here is just for my purposes because I've got some doubles. But that's what Morandi means. So if you're wondering why there are several sets of Morandi and they're different colours, that's why. Also, there are several different colours, several sets of colour of skin. So I've got 2 here. I don't know if there are any more. So they are different. The colours are different, but what I've found when I've had a look at them, just trying them out very quickly, some of them are only maybe a shade or 2 different. So they're very, very similar. They're not exact duplicates, but they're very, very similar because they've very closely graded the colours, you know, so the graduation of colour is very close and quite amazing for gel pens, if you ask me, because normally gel pens don't come in such an array of colours. But so I can tell these 2 sets apart because one is 0557 and one is 0569. So when I have a pen out, if it's got 0569 on it, I know it came from that particular set. So that's the best I can explain the numbering and the setup of the sets. So back to colouring, I've decided to put a bit of grey into the clouds and start darkening up this area and the background. And I don't have a lot of grey. In all the sets that I've got, there isn't very many grey shades. But some of my viewers have let me know that there is a couple of sets of grey available if you're interested in those. You can buy the sets as a job lot, and you can also buy the individual sets of 9 on their own on some sites as well. So do a bit of research. I know that the tariff situation is difficult for many in the US to access things from places like Temu, and I know that Amazon do sell some things, but Amazon isn't always the cheapest option either. So I'm sorry, you know, I can't give you definitive information about how to access these pens. You'll have to do your own research depending on where you are in the world. But here in Australia, I found that Temu was pretty easy to find them and access them, and the prices were very reasonable. So I ended up buying quite a large amount of sets that came together as a job lot, and there are a few things that are lacking, like the grey, but I can substitute other mediums that I have. I don't think I will be buying any more in a hurry because I've got a ridiculous amount of pens here that I need to get through first. So I'm just starting to darken up the clouds here, and I'm just doing it gradually. I did a layer first and then let it dry a little bit and then come back. So you might notice me jumping around from area to area quite a bit, and that's because you do need to let the paper dry, obviously, and sometimes the ink can take a little bit of time to dry as well, depending on how thick and opaque it is. So if you use it as a pen, just keep it in mind that it is a really nice thick ink and it can take a bit of time to dry. It's very easy to smudge the ink. So much the same as what you've seen me do so far, just applying very small areas of the pen and then diluting it out with the brush. And what I'm doing here is I'm starting to think about how to make the skeleton and the figure come forward, and I'm just gradually darkening up these bits of, I guess I'm thinking about it as smoke. I don't know really how else to describe it, but you know, it's like that eeriness about her dancing away there and slowly deteriorating and falling apart. So that's how I've decided to do it at this point in time. And as I keep mentioning, the page is a work in progress. I'm always thinking, you know, as I go about things, is this the best way that I can portray this? And I let the page evolve and I adapt as I go along. I really don't plan out any of the colours either before I start. I'm sorry if you can hear some noise in the background here, but Hamish has decided he wants to start throwing a ball around, so I do apologise for that. But yes, I don't plan any of the colours out really before I start, and I certainly don't have any firm ideas of how I'm going to approach the page. Occasionally that happens, but not very often, and especially with complex drawings and compositions like this one that have many elements, have many textures, things made of, you know, different substances and so on. There's an awful lot to think about here, and if I was to sit and think about it beforehand, I probably would never get started. So I tend to just jump in. Start with something that takes my attention first, and then just gradually work my way through it. And that's how I tend to make sense of these very busy compositions. Sometimes I do have a bit of trouble working out the perspective of things, you know, so when there are many layers to a picture, where you have something at the foreground, you have something in the middle distance, and then you have things in the far distance or the background. It can be really tricky for me to work that stuff out when it's just a line drawing. It gets really confusing. So by gradually building up these colours, and particularly if you start with the far background or the closest foreground and then work through it, it tends to fall into place a little bit easier, and it's then possible to start darkening things up and working out how you're going to best portray that perspective. In the next clip, you will hear me talking about how gel pen works over the top of acrylic paint, because it was one of the questions that came up in Dede's live stream the other night. I have done some experiments in Camilla Derrico's Flights of Fancy, and this particular page here was an experimentation with all things acrylic paint markers and paint pens. And these bees in all of the brown and the black areas, I used one of these to put all of the details in, so it worked over the top of acrylic paint. So if you want to see how I did this page, I do have a video on my channel. This is quite heavy black acrylic paint in the background here, and we'll see how it works over the top, and it does work. You might have to work at getting it opaque if you're doing large areas of colour, but for these dots, yeah, it's working. So I'll lift that up. Let's try and get, oh, where are you? Here we are. So you can see the larger dots, it was a little bit patchy, but if you just wanted to do dots or little tiny details, highlights or something, yes, it does work over the top of other acrylic paint. Dede was trying to use the pens on a plate because I said that I had used the plate with them a little bit. So let me just think about where I might use this. And for example, I'll do some brown and maybe pick it up and go down here. So let's grab a brown. And this is just a bread and butter plate, small plate, dinner plate, ceramic. And it is hard to get it started, to get it going. And you see how difficult that is to get that going. If I plug up that hole at the end of the pen and work at getting the flow of the ink working better, and sometimes I find it helps if you take that whole end out, put it back in. Some people actually take that end out. Now I can't get the damn thing out again. Some people take that end out and then plug up, you know, the end completely with no cap in there. But you have to kind of work in little, let's see if I can get a bit closer to the camera so you can see this without blowing it out too much because it's white. All right, so if I work into little tiny bits, so if I go like this, it's hard, okay? But if I do little concentrated areas like this, see how it floods out and it's a lot thicker. Best if you keep your pen upright. But see how if I do that, it's coming out. If I do this, nothing, okay? And then with the water brush, you see how easily that is dissolving or diluting. Now you don't need to use a water brush. You can use a pot of water and a regular brush. And then you can apply it to your paper like a regular watercolour wash. And then if that's too dark, I can put a little bit of water back on the top of that and just very gently, because you know the more that you rub at the surface of the paper, you're going to peel your paper up. And this is very much going to be dependent on your paper. Like any water-soluble product, it's very, very dependent on what the paper is going to allow you to do and as how it's going to, like the result that you're going to get out of it. And I'll say it again, because I'm very process driven over results driven, I personally don't get too worried about whether I peel the paper and I rough up the surface of the paper. I also don't get too hung up on bleed through. I don't like it, but you know, I'll put up with it because I've enjoyed colouring the page. So please do always keep these things in mind when you're watching somebody else work. Their tolerance level for some of the damage or some of the negative sides of doing something may be higher than yours. And if this sort of thing really bothers you, then don't do it. I'm not judging you, but I'm just saying don't do it. You know, if it bothers you to have it bleed through and ruin a book, it bothers you to wrinkle the pages in your book, or it bothers you to tear up the surface, you know, potentially have holes and failures and so on, then not for you. But please do keep in mind that when you're watching other people do stuff on the internet, unless you've got the exactly consistent, precise conditions to what they are working with, nothing is guaranteed when it comes to art. And technique goes a long way, but your personal proficiency in what you can do means that you're never ever going to create something exactly the same as someone else. That's why we don't have that many forgeries, that many forgers who make a good living from forging art. Well, a bit different now, I guess, with AI, but I'm thinking back to the days of when we used to have art forgeries with proficient painters who could copy to a certain level and confuse people and trick them, but you know, it hasn't exactly been a big thing. So be curious, try and be confident, and approach things when they're new like this to you with an open mind and a willingness to have to try and find your own way with it to a certain degree. I'm not an art teacher. You know, I'm not trained as an art teacher. I don't know how to completely explain everything, you know, for you. But I do my best, and I do my best to try and show you what I'm doing in the manner that I'm doing it, so that you can see if you can have a go at mimicking it for yourself or working out a way to do something yourself. I'm very much, I want to enable you, enable your confidence, not enable you to keep buying, but enable your confidence to have a go. So again, can you see it's a little bit hit and miss? If I do that, definitely does not work. But if I'm working in little areas like this, and Dede did mention, like, this is going to slow you down. This is a slower process in terms of, look how tiny that little nib is, okay? If you want fast, quick results, please don't think that this is going to be ideal for you. And then I'll just bring it up again. Okay, so you can see I'm not even squeezing that water brush yet. Sorry, there's a hair there. So, you know, just even little dabbing motions, and look how it's diluting it. So it can be done on a plate. It may be too fiddly for you. I think Dede sort of indicated that, yeah, going to slow her down too much. She's, you know, not necessarily looking for that. But it's just, you know, I want to share it because it's just an option for you. If you want to take it and run with it, that's great. If you don't, if it's not for you, then that's fine too. Remember, I'm not going to be offended. I'm just going to still sit here and colour in the way that brings me joy. And I'm not upset if you discover that my way doesn't bring you joy. You'd rather do it a different way. So there you go. That's how I would do that. I'll give you a closer look at the back of the page so you can see exactly what's happening in terms of bleed through, because I've had a few questions about that. Understandably so, because I actually did think yesterday when I was working on this bit at the top in the sky that it was definitely going to bleed through that blue. So can you see here there's like a very slight bit of ghosting. So if I can get this to... Slight bit of ghosting there on his sleeve and that wood there. And that's it for that page. And then this page here, there is a little bit up here, which again would be, yeah, the blue. So that little area there, you can see that faint bit of ghosting. So I'm hugely surprised, to be honest, because this paper doesn't feel the heaviest. Worried about how this was bleeding out up here, and you can see now that it's dry, you can still see some of the lines here. Haven't quite diluted fully. There we go. So, and in here. But I'm not greatly concerned about that. I think it's okay to leave a little bit of that. I may put pencil on it yet, I don't know. Oh, that was the other thing that I was going to show you. This is a page I'm working on at the same time, double spread I'm working on at the same time. And up here, this fairy or whatever she is here, her hair was done with the gel pen as a gel pen, and I didn't dilute it at all. Just make sure I've got no colour on that. So once they are completely dry, that's not moving. And again, this guy in the corner here, this was all done just as the pen, you know, no water brush, no diluting. It's not moving. So when the pen is used as a pen and it's not actually diluted with water, see if I can get this to focus for you. So on the cat here, I'm trying to, there you go. Can you see that shine? It dries almost like acrylic paint, like a thick acrylic paint. And that is not moving. So that's not moving. And I don't think that when it's used like that, thickly like that, like this corner is as well. Let's see if we can get that shine. There you go. I don't think pencil's going to work over that. But I do believe that pencil will work in areas like this. And I'm not ready to do that just yet, but when I do, maybe I'll record some of that for you. Okay, so thanks for listening, and I'll be back soon. So first thing up, I'm going to use the Crayola pencils because I do actually have them out already. So I'm going to grab some colours out of the regular and the Colours of the World set maybe, or maybe just the regular one to start. Dark brown and ash and maybe black. Now, you know I don't normally use a lot of black, but you know, some pictures kind of dictate what would be good. So let's just have a go with doing some of this background on the tombstones, gravestones, tombstones, not sure what to call them. And I just want to have a go and see whether they're going to go over the top of the diluted Languo Gel Pens, and yes they are. Absolutely no trouble at all to get them to go over the top of the diluted gel pen. And let's see, we'll do somewhere a little bit. Now that's a little bit less diluted here. Got that slightly sort of acrylic feel to it, and the pencil's gone quite shiny over it, but it has worked over the top of it. Quite easily, to be honest. Like, there's no real difficult getting that to work over the top there. So obviously at the bottom here is well away from any source of light, and it's going to be dark, so I'm happy to put a bit of black in just to create a little bit of drama. And I don't think I will be using a lot of pencil. I don't know. I mean, I tend to just sort of go with it as it develops. I don't really put too much pre-thought into any of these things. I dare say it shows sometimes that I don't, but each to their own, hey? So that's definitely working. So let's put a little bit of brown down here where we've used the gel highlighters and diluted. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my words again. Diluted or dissolved. I keep trying to say the two words at once, I think. Just be careful there. I've got a piece of paper and I could feel the edge of it. So that would definitely help take some of the warmth out of that colour. So I felt like that colour was looking a little bit warm down there, but I wanted to try the highlighters. And that was what we had, of course, so that's what I went with. But the dark brown, is that what it's called? Dark brown. Excuse me. The dark brown is taking some of the warmth out of that without turning it into black. So that works perfectly okay. So what I would like to do now is I've got this double page at the beginning here that I've also been working on. And I've got some areas where I've, particularly up here and down here, where I've used the gel pen as it is, let it dry, and I haven't diluted it. You may be able to hear some rain there that we've got hitting the window. We've had some strange unseasonal weather, and it was quite warm, and now winter is back with a vengeance, and it's an icy wind blowing today. It's very cold. Well, cold by our standards. So here I am trying this over the top of the gel pen that has dried to a slightly shiny plasticky type finish, and it is definitely very hard to get the pencil working over that. It's working, but it's nowhere near as easy. It doesn't sort of feel 100% comfortable, but it is working. Bearing in mind that this is the super hard Crayola, I thought if I'd worked with something that could be deemed to be tricky at the best of times, if it works, then I think you might find that you'll get other pencils to work as well. So yeah, it's working. Gee, that rain is coming down almost sideways. I'm glad to be inside today. And just as suddenly as it starts, it stops again. So yes, the answer to do pencils go over the top of these Languo gel pens? Yes, they do. Are they perfect? Maybe not. You might have to work at it a little bit, considering what type of pencils you are using. But you can do something with them. And that really is enough for me, for what I want to achieve with these particular pens. I would be happy with that. To me, that's a good result. Now that's over water-based marker there, so that's not really proving anything, is it? Oh, this little bit down here is gel pen as well. So if it's important to you to be able to layer with coloured pencil over the top, I will say that yes, Crayola is working, and therefore I would suggest that many other brands should do as well. I'm trying to get some detail in, not too much in that background there, but there's a lot of stuff going on here with Kerby's line work. There's a lot of suggestion of, it's stones, maybe marble, it's a graveyard. So there's a lot of line work here that's suggesting texture and detail and so on. And I'm trying to create a nice balance of preserving some of that, but not making it the highlight of the page. I'm trying to keep a balance. So once again, the girl is the girl into the skeleton is the highlight of the story, of course. It's what it's all about. So with the pencil now, what I'm trying to do is preserve a little bit of texture, a little bit of interest, some detail without being over the top with the detail, because I don't want people looking at that background first and then noticing the girl. It's about the girl first. So I'm just deepening up some of the areas behind her. This would all be very much in shadow, and that's what I'm doing there. And I have to say that the Crayola pencils are working very nicely over those diluted Languo gel pens. Not a problem at all with it. It's working nicely. It's building up colour easily, and I'm rather taken with it, to be honest. I will probably be using these techniques again in the future. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and go with the light brown, and we'll start putting a bit of colour onto the girl herself, because a lot of the work that I did on the girl, and I'm sorry if you can see some dog hair there. It's winter, so my border collie Cross has got a very thick woolly coat that he keeps sharing with the rest of us, so we end up covered in it. So with the girl, I used a lot of the pen on its own without diluting it. It's pure pen. In the skirt and her dress, I did blend that out with water, but on her skin, on her flesh, on her hair, her legs and so on, it is all gel pen. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of a demo so that you can see how that works, and I can talk that through with you in real time maybe. And I'm keeping, although she's got a very vibrant dress obviously and those lovely red shoes that are going to kill her, I want, other than that, I want her to sort of be quite muted, because it is a night scene and it's a dramatic image of this girl dancing herself to death. And so I felt like keeping the colours of her quite muted might help tell that story. And it's difficult to put into words, but it's a fine balance, because as I mentioned, I want her to be the star. So, you know, part of me says make her stand out, but then part of me says think about the story and what's going on, and that it's a night scene, you know, so don't make her too vibrant. So it's just getting that little balance of trying to portray the ideas that you've got about what's happening. And the pencil definitely is more difficult to work over the top of. I feel like it's working. It might potentially need a little bit of work, and that might put some of you off. But I haven't got any other pencils out to try yet, so, you know, potentially easier with other pencils, I don't know. At this point, I'm going to continue with the Crayola pencils and work with them. I think they're working really nicely over the diluted pen, and I don't really want to introduce too many more mediums now at this stage. I think that this page is, it's been quite experimental, and I don't really want to put any more different types of medium on here now. I want to just work with what I've got. So I will continue to finish this page, and you will see it in my completed pages at the end of the month, which is not too far away now. So I would just like to say that I hope that I've answered all the questions that you may have about the Languo gel pens, using them with water and diluting them. and I hope that I've addressed some of the questions that you may have about using the gel pens with other art mediums. And I'd like to encourage you at this point to say, I don't want you to rush out and buy these things that I've been using unless you're in the market for some new art materials. And then that way, you know, this might help you decide whether it's something for you or not. But I share these things with you and the way that I'm using them as a Kickstarter for you to think about, can you transfer these techniques and what I've been doing here as an experiment, can you transfer that to anything that you already own in your collection? Can you maybe be working with what you've already got in a slightly different way and discover new techniques and results that you can achieve with what you already have? And if you are, you know, you do decide you want them, then that's great. You know, that's wonderful. But please don't feel like you must have any of these things that you see me use. Quite often what I'm hoping to do is share with you the techniques that I'm using, and many times that can transfer over to different brands, different things, and not necessarily am I trying to sell you a particular product. So please keep that in mind. So I hope that you've enjoyed watching this. I hope that you've got something from it. If you have watched to the end here and you know, I haven't bored you to tears, please leave me an emoji, maybe a smiling face emoji, and I will know that you have watched to the end, and it will give me an idea of how many of you have actually found this video to be helpful. So thanks again, everyone. I look forward to seeing you again soon, hopefully. And as I mentioned, I will have this page in my completed pages in a couple of days' time. So until then, happy colouring and take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.